So when I thought about what my shelter was, I thought as a friend of mine said, I don't have a shelter. And I think that's not true. My shelter is my reading. I think my shelter is my faith. I'm not really comfortable with saying that, but we'll see that David in Psalm 91 talks about the same thing. Um, the psalm, according to the Talmud, is attributed to either Moses or David. I didn't know about the latter, but there is a perspective in the Talmud, a shita, where David is, as he is understood to be, the speaker of most of the psalms. The well-known Gemara says these 12, I think, from 90 to 102, are all written by Moses. And you'll see the first line why that is, why we go with Moses. So this is a poem that Robert Alter, the brilliant translator, but not often brilliant commentator, and the two things obviously affect each other at some point, said this is an amulet psalm, an amulet poem that like wards off bad luck. And I think that that perspective, and I get it when people try to categorize the Psalms as wisdom Psalms, blah, blah, blah. I mean, these categorizations ultimately just make people not see what's actually happening in the Psalm because a lot doesn't fit into that definition or that category. Surprise. So let's read this together. Whoso dwelleth in the secret of the Most High shall abide in the shadow of the Almighty. The word in Hebrew is seser. Whoso dwelleth in the secret of the Most High. It's a risky translation because it's not really great English, but it does go with the Hebrew. Now, this poem seems to be about shelters and refuges and being protected under God's wings or his shield or his truth being, as we'll see, the shield and armor. At the very outset, the Geneva translators, who were exiled during the reign of Queen Mary, it was called the Marian exile. And they went to Geneva and they wrote a Protestant Bible with a scholarly apparatus. They only usually have footnotes when they have questions about the translation. And very frequently they will rely upon Jewish commentators, medieval commentators, to resolve the issues. They ask the same questions. And the reason they ask the same questions is because Protestants, in some sense, were like Jews. I mean, even though Luther hated them, or maybe because Luther hated them, I mean, he saw that Jews and Protestants were so similar in their iconoclasm, in their suspicion of the image, in the suspicion that in any way, the physical can be a manifestation of the divine. If you think the physical can be divine, you're missing everything, says Luther. He also writes a book called the Jews and Their Lies. That's when you feel anxiety about being like somebody you hate or being like somebody you don't want to acknowledge. And that's an introduction to anti-Semitism. That's for another time. Whoso dwelleth in the secret of the Most High shall abide in the shadow of the Almighty. Yoshe b'seter elyon. In Hebrew, we can't read the verse without thinking, oh, it's God at first. But the rest of the verse, the Tzel Shaddai, to be in the shadow of the Almighty, the all-powerful Shaddai. So there's a tension. First, it's the divine. And then when we know it can't be the divine because it's somebody dwelling in the secret of the Most High, shall abide in the shadow of the Almighty. If that's the same person, well, it's a person and not God. So there are two aspects, and this is why it goes with Moses. Moses had the closest relationship to God. He went up to the heights to get to the Torah. He somehow is split between a very pure part of his soul, which is with God, whoso dwelleth in the secret of the Most High, and in the shadow of the Almighty. It's almost like the king's two bodies in Shakespearean plays. One body is holy, and the other body is human. And it goes on, I will say unto the Lord, O my hope and my fortress, he is my God, in him I will trust. Being assured of his protection, he prays unto God. This is being now understood as a prayer. I will say unto the Lord, O my hope and my fortress, he is my God, in him I will trust. My fortress, my place. Surely I will do. What's the Hebrew? I can't. We have to just look at the Hebrew for a second. Forgot it. Um, my refuge. Maxi umsudati. Elokai eftachbach. See why the Geneva is so much better. Surely I will deliver thee from the snare of the hunter and from the noisome pestilence, from plague. Here are two organic metaphors now, or two different metaphors, one organic, one inorganic. He will cover thee under his wings, and thou shalt be sure, protected under his feathers. His truth, amito, shall be thy shield and buckler. The shield is the thing I hold out in front of me. The buckler is the armor that goes around me. His shield and buckler shall be thy truth. Some translations just say armor. The idea is here that what is his truth, God's truth, is my armor. What does this armor protect me from? Thou shalt not be afraid of the fear of night, nor of the arrow that flieth by day. Things that happen in time, neither at night nor at daytime should you be afraid. And we see the movement of the arrow flying by day. And this idea that somehow, what is it that protects me from these things? What is my fortress? Interesting, the eagle spread out wings. It's a common metaphor not common, but it's also in Isaiah. I think maybe the organic aspect of the metaphor is of the protection of a parent for the child, and it's more qualitative. And more quantitative is the sense of being protected by on all sides. I kind of think of it as this barrel or rocket going through time. Whatever, that's a horrible metaphor when you literalize it, but he is protected, the speaker, from all sides. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come near thee. After October 7th, I think these words read a little bit differently. It is messianic. It's in the future. And we'll read a couple more lines. Doubtless with thine eyes shalt thou behold and see the reward of the wicked. You will see those things. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come near thee. If you read the verse really out of context, we've had this experience, and this is part of being in a shelter where so many have fallen, and we are okay. For thou hast said, why will you merit this in the future? The Lord is mine hope. Thou hast set the Most High for thy refuge. The Geneva gets the ambiguity here. For thou hast said, the verb in the Hebrew doesn't come to the very end. For thou hast said, the Lord is mine hope. Thou hast set the Most High for thy refuge. You said these things, the Lord is mine hope, and that's why you merited what happened in lines 7 and 8. Let's just look at the Hebrew. It is truly bizarre and untranslatable. Ki ata Hashem, maksi elyon, samta monecha. There's no he said, right? Ki ata, because he said, or you said, he said, God is my protection, my highest protection, and you made as your haven. I mean, I'm even stumbling as I'm trying to read this. The first part reads, Ki ata Hashem. It comes from the first person. The second part reads, and the Geneva translation does a good job here, thou hast said, the Lord is mine hope, thou hast set the Most High for thy refuge, and it preserves the reading, for thou, the Lord, is mine hope. So we hear both voices at the same time. There shall none evil come unto thee, neither shall any plague come near thy tabernacle. For he shall give his angels charge over thee to keep thee in all thy ways. They shall bear thee in their hands, that thou hurt not thy foot against a stone. Like a lot of the great poetry of the 17th century, even as you're told not to see something, you see it anyway. They shall bear thee in their hands, that thou hurt not thy foot against a stone. Foot is almost bruising the stone in the poetry. Thou shalt walk upon the lion and asp. These are dangerous. The young lion and the dragon, that's certainly not a faithful translation. Obviously translators are having problems. And the dragon shalt thou tread under feet. So we understand now why this would be a poem or a psalm that people would look to feel a sense of protection. But then in line 14, there's all of a sudden a voice coming from the divine voice is speaking from like where? And this is a kind of ventriloquism, David giving voice to God. Because he hath loved me, therefore will I deliver him. I will exalt him because he hath known my name. He shall call upon me and I will hear him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and glorify him. With long life, I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. So this is like almost a Hebraic Deus ex machina, that suddenly a voice comes from outside. It's the divine voice. Let's read it again. David says, or God says, because he hath loved me. And now we have, it's either David and his Talmud, Moses and his Talmud, or just David. And just, therefore will I deliver him. I will exalt him because he hath known my name. He knew my name. And because he knew my name, he shall call upon me and I will hear him. Once you name the divine, then you can call upon him and he will be heard. I will be with him in trouble. David's God promises David. I will deliver him, David's God promises David, and glorify him, David's God promises David. With long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation. This is a prayer, by the way, or a psalm, by the way, that people who go to synagogue on Shabbat read it every single week. It's really, really, really hard, as you see. And one gets the sense of the divine protection, but it's based upon faith. The refuge is the place of faith. Because he hath loved me, therefore I will deliver him. I will exalt him because he hath known my name. He shall call upon me. He named me and I will hear him. I am in relationship with him, says David's God to David. You see, this is, I'm pushing in the direction of David because we don't in other places see Moses doubting the divine or doubting his place in the divine story. That's not Moses, very much David. So by the end of the psalm, these last three lines is a prayer. It's David's prayer, the prayer which enacts what it's talking about. That is, when he calls out to God, this prayer, he gives the divine reality. He gives the divine reality through words. So the refuge then is not a place. Protestants and Jews agree upon this. There is no safe space. Or, as Satan says in Paradise Lost, the mind is its own place, can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. Hamlet says something very, very similar. Big surprise. The mind, the faithful mind. Satan has a modern mind, but he is not a faith. He sees things, he can't see things properly because he's a narcissist. He only sees himself. So there is no, it's so funny that in a poem with so many nouns, so many places, the tabernacle, the refuge, my hope, my fortress, all of these places, but the protection that God gives is through time. And God gives through time when his truth shall be thy shield and thy buckler. I think I like the translation here. Let's see. Right. They really go for with pinions you will be covered. That's the organic metaphor. You will find refuge under God's wings, whose fidelity is an encircling shield. Now that's a bad translation because it's not literal at all. But in terms of getting we lose the vehicle, but we get the tenor. The encircling shield, the emphasis on being encircled and safe on all sides, beloved and safe on all sides. That's the faith that gets you through time. because there's no safe space. I mean, we can create safe spaces. And surely there are safe spaces, places where we are safe from attack, and places where we feel safe to speak and talk, like we're doing on Writing on the Wall. But the real safety, the real refuge, the real refuge, the real shelter is the mind. Let me just see if I can find that Hamlet quote. I just love it so much. It's right here, I think. Hamlet welcomes Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. They're there to spy on him, of course. Right from the beginning, Denmark's a prison. Then is the world one. I mean, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are like, what's up with this dude? A goodly one in which there are many confines, wards, and dungeons, Denmark being one of the worst. We think not so, my lord. Why then, 'tis none to you, for there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. To me, it is a prison. Why then your ambition makes it one. 'Tis too narrow for your mind. O God, I could be bounded in a nutshell and count myself a king of infinite space, were it not that I have bad dreams. Here it's Hamlet's mind. The mind is its own place. And that mind is infinite resources, were it not that I have bad dreams. And David or Moses, the voice of the Psalms, is always haunted by bad dreams. And the way to keep from falling into the bad dreams, this is why the psalmist is so amazing. And we never want to dismiss any of his poems as like mere expressions of faith. They're prayers. They're based upon doubt. They're based upon human emotion and human language and how humans bring the divine into the world. Thomas Mann said of the stories of the Bible that are retold to Joseph by his pharmacist, fiction novelist. He says there are two kinds of stories. That's one of Mann's midrashic creations. One is the bedrock, he calls them fairy tales. And then there's what grows out of the bedrock, what grows out of the soil. And for Mann, the Torah Shabbat, the written Torah, I don't mean to dismiss it as a fairy tale. I don't mean that, but it is the fertile ground through which all of the other stories get told. And this is what David understands so well. I mean, for David really is, he is the midrashist of the soul. And the commentary on the story, commentary is everything. And Mann, he refers to the story of the Jews as the greatest story of all. He writes Joseph and his brothers while Jews are being exterminated. Mann understood that if the world were to survive, the Jews must survive as well. So what is our refuge? Our refuge is that faith. In that hope, we know that for the world to survive, we have to. Listen, I don't say this lightly and I don't say this with arrogance. It's a statement of responsibility. David the Psalmist, all yours.